Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is my co-hostess, Vanessa Hogle. And down in the chat room, our chat Shananigator, Shana, shaking everything up. We have a fantastic show up for you tonight. Richard Case is with us. He's a paranormal researcher out in the UK, was referred to us by our great friend, Alexandra Holzer. Let me tell you a little bit about Richard. He is known as the Ghost Challenger. He's been doing this for quite a while. He has over 35 years of experience in the field. He's investigated notorious haunts like Alcatraz. He spends his time alone in reputedly haunted buildings around the world, which is then broadcast live on social media. His work has been featured on numerous radio stations, including BBC Radio, as well as in books, magazines, and newspapers. Around the UK, Richard lectures about the paranormal, as well as witchcraft, history, and folklore, which he has also studied. So, Richard, we're happy to have you aboard, and you and Vanessa were having a fantastic conversation before we went live.
We were.
So
yeah.
We could just pick up right there.
Sure. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Vanessa, for
Thank
having me on the show. I'm trying to think where we were, Vanessa. We were talking about all sorts, really, weren't we?
You might have to recap for the audience, catch them up a little bit.
All righty. Yeah, what Richard and I were discussing, since he is based in the UK, and I've been over there in different areas multiple times, discussing some of the lesser known areas and different things going around. And Richard, you said that you had a location that if I can make it back over there, you're going to take me to.
Yeah, and what was interesting, do you want to tell, because you probably want to tell the listeners what you actually felt about that location?
It was interesting because when you brought up that you had the keys to a location that they trust you with, immediately I felt like I was either being strangled or hung. I mean, I could actually feel my throat getting smaller from the outside in. And to me, the girl reminds me of me, and hair color, eye color, and maybe not as voluptuous, chunky, but reminds me of me, and I couldn't get past that feeling. And you said that was very interesting. Would you tell us why?
Yeah, because with that location, I've taken different people and people that don't even know each other. And I've taken, a lot of the time, we found that females get affected when they go to this location. And there's one incident where a young woman was in the location and she felt like she had a long scarf on. And I was a bit, is it the scarf catching on the chair of the location? But she suddenly felt as if she was being strangled or hung almost. And we've had that feeling with so many females that have gone into location. The men, nothing at all, but all the females, and as I say, they don't know each other, they've not met, so that's very interesting that you picked up on that.
It makes me wonder if there is a spirit who's malicious in nature that's a man.
That is something. Yeah. We do feel. I mean, we did a very strange kind of investigation, because I'm not a fan of these things that a lot of the modern day gadgets, and
I don't use any of them.
Very good. We're happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But one thing they did have is they had this like a kitten ball. If a cat runs along and plays with the ball and it flashes and everything else, so it's got to be moved to actually flash. And in this area where we think this guy sat, we had the ball there, and suddenly it was flashing and it was continual. And the only way it would have done it is it's been moved. And I was nearby, nothing was moving it. There was no vibration that I could notice, and it kept going on. And we were having this conversation, and it seemed to be this guy that was speaking to me. And he was well aware of the fact that he didn't get on with women, and and other mediums have picked that up as well.
That's very interesting, because I don't even know what location you're talking about. I just know that if I go to the back of it and to the far right corner, I'm not going to be happy. And then there's an area behind it, the ground behind it, ground or yard area that's directly behind that area, to me almost feels like it's a part of it, like things were meant to be hidden back there.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense to what we're finding at the place, and a lot to do with the history. Unfortunately, I can't say where the location is, because we're keeping it. No, but obviously, eventually.
Yeah, she's a medium. She doesn't want to know.
I don't want to know. Yeah. I would love to get off a plane over there and have you drive me directly to it.
That's
fantastic. Exactly what I would like to do.
Be careful though. She runs.
I do run.
I've been known to run.
Yeah. Well,
she'll run toward it though.
Yeah, I'll run toward it. Now you were talking about, or we were both talking about some of the lesser known areas, and I feel a little bit more joy in asking you this question than I do others, because generally if we say, what's your favorite place you've ever been to? Here in the States, they're going to tick off one of the top 5.
Yeah.
I want to know what yours is, knowing what you do, trying to seek out lesser known places. What is the most profound experience you've had?
I think it is going back to this place, because this place is very active and it's not known. There was some historical information we found of a haunting a long time ago, and people have said about this place. And I thought, well, let's go somewhere that's not known to people and see what we get. And I went there, and I was in this area, and I had a voice recorder. Now, I do believe that, you get EVP, and sometimes you get it and it's just noise, as we all know.
Right.
It's just some kind of, with pareidolia, people are thinking they hear something, and it's nothing at all. But when I was there, I said, we come with, respect, we mean, no harm. And as clear as day, I had a male voice going, "We know." And it was like, "We know," very distinct. You didn't need to go and, analyze it, nothing like that. You heard it straight away. It was not put in anyone's head. And that was good. That was, the best bit of EVP I've had in a while. And I then decided to keep at this location. And I think that more things have gone on there. And ironically, even though I do the ghost challenge where I'm left on my own in haunted buildings, and I've even been, on my own in Alcatraz in certain areas, this particular location, I'm a bit, I don't know if I'm going to be left alone in that particular area. So, yeah, that's one of the most interesting ones.
And I mean, I get the whole wanting to be alone, but I'm interested to see if it's for the same reason. For me, if I want to go into an area alone, it isn't so I can prove I'm Billy Badass or nothing like that.
Yeah.
I want to shut out all the other stuff.
Sure.
The din, the any other sounds coming from anyone else, and just feel it.
Precisely, because a lot of people think with the ghost challenge, they think that I'm somebody that, I'm going to go in and challenge them all, and I'm going to aggravate ghosts, because the name itself probably gives that impression.
Sure. But so what do you mean by the ghost challenger?
Well, when I first started, believe it or not, I started as a skeptic, complete skeptic on the whole thing, and I said, I believe that 98% of the paranormal can be explained by science and psychology. So I said, I'm going to start a group and I want to challenge it. I want to, they say there's a ghost. Okay, I'll go in there and prove it's probably something else. So I was a little bit of a challenger. And then things happened that made me think, no, there's something in this, because I'm getting things that I just cannot explain. And I just kept the name the Ghost Challenger. And it was really just to take the challenge, go in a place on my own and do that, but not to actually challenge a spirit or aggravate.
Right, you're not trying to provoke. Okay.
No, not at all. No. And I think, what Vanessa's saying, I think the more I've done this, the more I felt better than been with a group or with a team. I've been on my own. You haven't got all these flashing gadgets around you. You haven't got a K2 meter that's going at everyone's iPhone that they say is, turned off or whatever. And it's going back to basics, going back to the basic ghost hunting, which is what I like about Alexandra Holzer and Hans Holzer and all the traditional ghost hunters, just going back to the basic, going back to where it all started.
Yeah, I mean that's basically my roots. As I started reading Hans, and it's fantastic that I've become friends with his daughter over the years. So when you talk about bringing back to basics, and you've already mentioned that you don't like to use some of the different gadgets. So when you do investigate, what do you bring along with you?
I would bring along the old. Occasionally, I will take the temperature. Take the temperature. I will take a voice recorder, because I believe that EVPs can be captured. I believe those sort of things, and maybe a camera. But I tend to stay away from the K2 meters and a lot of the other things. And one thing I'm not a fan of is the ghost box. I know a lot of people take the ghost box everywhere.
Awesome.
And they say, oh, we come up with this and we come up with that. And I say, well, you're in the location, and you could be, if you are picking up something, and if you're picking up someone that once lived, you're picking up, you're not necessarily picking up from that location. You could be picking up from somewhere else. And, how do you know it's from that location?
Yeah, I just don't believe ghosts talk in a radio signal. That's my main issue.
Are y'all talking about those spirit box weird things?
Yeah.
About the made things that people are doing.
Oh, it's all the same. They're all related.
Yeah, they're all the same. I mean, I think it's also like, why would a ghost knock once, knock twice, to communicate sometimes? I've heard loud bangs, I've heard loud knocks trying to get attention. But I think there is this misconception that, the K2 meters flash in, the ghost box is coming up with this noise, which is just sweeping a radio station. It's a DJ talking about the weather or something, and you hear the word which sounds like kill, and everyone's saying, oh, he wants to kill you. And I'm saying, well, maybe he doesn't,
That is okay. I have to say something here before I freeze again, because you just tickled me. So anytime on a lot of these shows and a lot of people's investigations, the second something happens, they're like, oh, they're mad we're here. They're this, they're that. Or do you want me to leave, demon? And I've talked about this on the show before. When we were over in Ireland, we were at a volatile place. And I can say it now because the episode's out. We were at Moore Hall. It has a very volatile history.
Sure.
And our security person was with us. It was me and Gwen and our security person. And he's 6'4". He was up on a ladder taking pictures inside the first floor. That's how big this place was. Yeah. His phone was off. It was on the windowsill away from him. It turned the flashlight on, and then spun off the windowsill with nobody near it. If you were to watch that on some of these shows out there, all of a sudden it would be a demon wanting them to leave. For us, it was like, well, hell, that was kind of cool. And we picked it up and went about our business. Yeah. That's what I don't understand.
I'm the same, Vanessa, because I believe that, these people once lived, and if they're trying to get your attention, they're trying to talk to you. And I do believe, obviously, there are people that once lived that aren't very nice. There are nasty, evil people. And I believe that some locations you can get those kind of people come through. But I believe the majority of the time you're speaking to somebody, you're asking for them to communicate with you. And when they try to get your attention, what makes me laugh is some paranormal groups will suddenly go out and have a cigarette and leave it. Yeah.
Or get mad at it.
Yeah, or get mad or scream. Yeah.
I mean, that's like saying, God, I wish somebody would give me $1 million. And then when they do, saying, bitch, and throwing it at them. To me, that's the equivalent. That is the equivalent. And I can't wrap my brain around that.
Can relate to you, Vanessa. When I was at a location, I went to one location and I heard what sounded like a swirling dress, up in the top room. And I ran up those stairs, not away from it, but to go up and see it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I was so excited, I wanted to see the apparition. I wanted to see for myself. Unfortunately, I didn't see the apparition, but that's how I tended to go with it.
Yeah, Richard, your stance on the ghost box has really kind of stirred up the chat room a bit. For one, they all love your accent. But like Shana says that you've received massive brownie points from her. Victoria says, I was in San Antonio and the quote-unquote ghost box was in Tejano music. And then Lamby Pie 25 says, or asks, so if I have a ghost box and it starts skipping and saying Billie Jean, do I have Michael Jackson with me?
This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, there are people also that, I don't want to name names or anything like that, but as soon as some celebrity dies, they get on.
Yeah, that is the most disrespectful thing.
And so unethical.
That's terrible.
So unethical.
Yes.
We've lost a great guy. I knew him personally, and that was Derek Akora.
Uh-huh.
And he was a showman. Yes, no doubt about it. But as a medium, when he was a gentleman, he was a real genuine guy. And unfortunately, you know, there have been people saying that he's contacted them, and it's just caused distress for the family, which is it's unnecessary.
It's to me, if anyone does that, it doesn't matter what evidence they get. It doesn't matter what they do after that. I once I've lost respect for you, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't want nothing to do with you. I would never work with you. I would never do any of that.
Yeah, it's disrespectful for the person that passed away, and it's disrespectful to the family that's currently grieving and having to go through this. They don't need to see, you know, a billion different YouTube videos out there of somebody trying to contact their loved one. And really, I mean, so the person passes away and suddenly they're coming to your kitchen to talk with you. I don't think so.
Out of everybody else, no.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to go to the person they loved, aren't they? You know, it's not going to happen like that. And you know, I think there's a lot of charlatans out there, and there's a lot of people that do it for the wrong reasons. And you know, we just need to be aware of those people and just do it the right way.
Absolutely.
You're right. That's really all you can do. And this was a tough lesson for me, Richard. This was a very tough lesson for me, because when I first came public, whenever I saw things like that, I wanted to draw attention to it. I wanted to say, look at this. Why are you allowing these people to be this way? And it's taken me a few years for me to sit back, a little self-reflection, and realize I have to change the public's view based on how I operate. Not like downing how someone else operates.
Exactly. And I think, you know, that's the way to be, is to try and do it your way, show the people the right way, and hopefully that gets through to people.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
So keep talking, because everybody loves the way you talk, self-included.
It's the English accent, I think.
It's the accent. People love the accent.
I miss this accent. So keep talking.
I know when I was over in the States, a lady was making me a milkshake, I think, at the time, and she was shaking away at that milkshake and saying, "I love that English accent." So.
But it's true. It's true. I bet it was a damn good milkshake too.
It was a damn good milkshake. Yeah.
She put some love into that milkshake.
Okay. So Richard, you go all over the world. I kind of want to ask a simplistic question. Where all have you been? We mentioned Alcatraz, but you've been around a lot. So I've been to Australia, Hawaii, Vietnam, Malaysia, all over. You know, I went on a massive journey right around the world, and I decided what I wanted to do was kind of get stories from the local people about their experience of ghosts, see what their take on it was. I mean, in Vietnam, it's interesting how they have almost like this belief in the vampire, you know, and they've got houses on stilts, and where they got the houses on stilts, they actually they've got it's like a vampire demon apparently that turns up, and it's a head, and the rest of the body is all, well, it sounds gross, but the entrails, you know, it's all her intestines sticking out of the bottom, and she's supposed to be like a vampire. And apparently what they do is, where their house is on stilts, they put shards of glass on the stilts, so that if she does come up, her entrails will get torn away from her body. So it's quite a gross story. But they have, you know, and it's completely different to the way we think of things. And you know, I think that's what's interesting. I think, you know, looking at Europe and looking at the States and looking at the world and comparing their take on ghosts, really.
That is really interesting. We had a case like that when I was in Ireland, in one of the interviews, from somebody who was from another country, not Ireland, but they were spending their time in Ireland, and they had their own particular story to tell. And then they were able to relay that to what their folklore is in their particular country. And for as many, you know, differences, there are just as many similarities. And even with the vampire.
There are. And, you know, I think what's a shame, almost a shame, is when you go to these countries and you see where modern day it's been Christianized, it's got a Christian country, and sometimes they're almost afraid to talk about their old beliefs, which is, to me, a little bit of a shame. And it's good to go back and, you know, I mean, we all know what happened to witchcraft in the past, and the terrible persecution of women and men as well over in Europe, and the fact that people just didn't understand that these were women just wanting to live their lives. There were cunning folk that could cure the odd ailment or illness, and just traditional wise woman, and not what they wanted to portray as.
Yeah, you studied witchcraft quite a bit here. So what do you think is the thing that people tend to forget the most about what happened during those times with people who were convicted of witchcraft?
I think people kind of almost I think the biggest thing they've not learned from, the lesson they've not learned from, is the ignorance. Because what it was you had the wise woman or a woman on her own in a village, and somebody was taken ill, and it was all put on that poor woman, and she was the one that had cursed them, and she was then accused of witchcraft. And then you look at today in Africa, where sadly there's still that kind of ignorance where children have been murdered because of witchcraft. So that ignorance is still there. Wow. It's still in modern society, and I think it's a shame we haven't kind of moved on from that, really.
Well, the unfortunate aspect of it is that there wasn't, to my knowledge, and I'm sure you're more well-versed in this than I am, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, pagans or witches, whichever you want to call them, they could be the same, they could be different. They were relatively left alone until Christianity was being spread. Yeah. And the thing that people need to know about being a pagan is all it means is country dweller, which means you didn't have any money because you traded. You traded candles for goats and chickens for seeds or stones. And that is how your community was ran. And there was no money in that to give to the church. So the pagans were relatively left alone.
It still goes on. Yeah, mm-hmm. Because very much so, because religion almost has this kind of, they believe that everything that's done, there's a ghost group locally in England that's gone to a church, and now they've had vandals go there and they've vandalized the place. Now I know that this ghost group has gone there, and suddenly, because they found out they were a ghost group, the local church people have put Satan worshippers come to church, and it's been desecrated by these people. And I'm thinking, no, it's they're not Satan worshippers. They're people that are I'm not saying I agree with them probably going there without permission, and I'm totally against that completely. But I think there is this kind of not understanding the paranormal, not understanding that kind of side of it, and anything that's beyond Christianity does give us that gives them the worry, doesn't it?
Exactly. Well, the pentagram does not now, has not ever, nor will it probably ever be an indicator of evil.
It's protection as well.
Right.
It was
very much very much it was an amulet of protection, and people forget that,
Are you familiar with the place called Nine Ladies Stone Circle?
I've heard of it. Yeah. Not been there, but
I've actually remote viewed for there, and interesting tale, I'll tell you another time. It's too long for here. But after I remote viewed for a team that was there, I went to sleep because I was exhausted.
Sure.
And I woke up, I sat straight up in bed, and I was like, there's no friggin' way. It hit me in a dream. And I've looked all over the internet and couldn't find anything that would discount this, but nothing that had ever said this was accurate. Nine Ladies Stone Circle is a pentagram.
Yeah.
It is. It is a perfect formation for a pentagram. And that actually that gave credibility to what happened during the fellas' investigation when they were there, because the center of that stone circle was just a vortex of energy.
Sure. Yeah.
But once they stepped outside of it, they were fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I went to Pendle Hill, which is in England, and obviously that was where a lot of witch trials happened in the 1600s, and I felt the energy in Pendle Hill. I'm a little bit, people say I'm sensitive, that I'm very sensitive to things, and I think I probably am. I didn't open up, or I've not gone down that route. I've always been a researcher, but even from a child, I've had that kind of experience. And when I was there, the funny thing was, I was in a particular area, and I can remember I was in the car, and suddenly, for whatever reason, I wanted to get away from that area. And but I didn't feel it was the witches. I felt it was the people that had persecuted, the anger, the the energy around there was so negative, and it was almost emotional, And I saw a lady that wrote a book about the Pendle Hill witches there. Her name's Mary Sharratt. She's written a fantastic book, and it really is real. There are so many TV shows that make out that witchcraft was evil, and they were sacrificing children, and they give a real completely Hollywood slant on everything, and it's completely wrong.
It's funny because I saw this meme the other day that says, just to let you guys know, witches don't eat children. We don't like spoiled food. And I mean, that just, I'm like, thank you. Exactly. That says it all,
Come on, Vanessa, I want to see where the wart is on your nose too.
Not on my nose, but it's right there.
Oh, geez.
That's my mole. That's my witch's mole right there. And
that's a lucky witch's mole.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where the devil's been suckling, right?
Yeah.
Apparently so. Yeah. That's
where the imp was. Yeah.
That's my face nipple right there. That's right there. I can't believe I just said that, but true story. But no, it's just we're the healers, like you said, the wise women. Whenever anyone has a problem, even to this day, Richard, people will come to me with a problem.
Yeah.
And then when I can fix the problem, because I know things I shouldn't know, all of a sudden I'm going to burn in hell. So for people who think that this doesn't still happen, believe me, it does.
Yeah.
Every day.
Unfortunately, it does. It does. Yeah.
I'm so glad that somebody like you researches it and can spread proper information.
It is very, I don't know what it's like. It probably is in the States. Sometimes it's very difficult in England, and if you do talks, you're going to do talks about witchcraft or folklore, you will get the odd one or two that'll turn up for the wrong reasons, and they'll be there, just to say, I'm just going to give you this Bible track, I'm gonna pray for you, and and everything else. And I was brought up in a very religious family, and trust me, I've seen the other side of religion, so right. I know.
But see, I was born baptized and raised a Catholic. So when somebody tells me that they're going to pray for me, I say thank you.
Yeah.
Because even if their intentions are not pure, my soul and my heart chooses to accept it as pure.
Sure.
And that's what I think we all need to do. Just because somebody says something derogative that they mean as being derogative doesn't mean we have to take it that way. And it's those small steps, I think, that change the way people view things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, Mike, I have seen, you mentioned about shadow people.
Yeah.
I have actually experienced that myself.
Okay. I'd be interested to hear your story.
Yeah, I was, well, funnily enough, it was my first honeymoon, believe it or not.
Shadow people on the honeymoon. Wait a minute. It's supposed to just be you and the missus.
Yeah. My first wife, and we're not married now, so I don't know what that means. But it was, I was in this, we were at this hotel place, and I suddenly saw what I can only describe as a shadow in the area, and looked like a monk. And it came over, and I knew it wasn't sleep paralysis because it come to move my arm and everything, like you said.
Oh, okay.
About the same thing. So I had the same kind of feeling. The thing I kicked myself about, and I'm trying to go back and research, is to find out if there was any link to a monastery to that particular place.
Right.
But what I will say about the shadow thing was there was no features. It was just a dark shadow, and it looked like the hood of a monk. And,
just all black. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing.
Yeah.
But the hood is interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And you said, so it touched your arm. Did it actually move your arm or anything like that?
Well, I felt it touch my arm, and then I just got up like you did when you told your story, and I kind of panicked quite a bit actually, and got out of bed to look, and it almost disappeared into what there was a kind of cupboard area. So went into that area, and then it just gone. It disappeared.
Oh wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
because there are other stories of people being touched or having their limbs manipulated, but it's not as common. Usually they're just, kind of standing there or what have you. So that's really interesting.
Now, Richard, did you feel scared about that because it felt scary, or just because it was unknown?
I think because that was a long time ago now, I think I did, but at that particular moment, I felt fear, yeah. I don't often get that because, I'm in locations on my own, and I kind of have to have the right presence of mind when I do it. Mm-hmm. But, there are the rare occasions when something will come along and I think this isn't right, I've got to go, or, it's different, and that was that particular moment. I did feel real fear there, yeah.
Okay, and you were straight up awake for this?
Yeah.
Okay, and nose paralysis. That's interesting.
Because I've spoken to people obviously with sleep paralysis, and
it happens, and that's the thing that I try to tell people is, sleep paralysis and seeing a shadow person are two different things. They can happen at the same time, but they're actually two different phenomena.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
I'm trying to think of how to ask this question, because I don't think you've already asked it or answered it. Considering your journey, was there one particular instance where you were just like, I came in a skeptic, but damn, that has changed my course? Right.
Do you know what the funny thing is? I was going to all these places, and I actually found the answer at home.
Did you?
In a personal way, because that's often the case with researchers. When you lose somebody, it's very personal to you, and I think and I think we always have to be aware of that when we do researching, and how it can affect people. And what was funny was my father-in-law never left a will, so we had to sort out his will a little while back. And I remember his name was Ken, and I remember saying to him, Ken, I've got to sort all this out. And suddenly my iPhone started ringing a number, and it's on the floor. And I looked and thought, well, it's ringing the local cemetery where he we had taken his body. And I smiled to myself, because that was the sort of joke he would have. I'm not here now. You're going to have to ring the cemetery. That's exactly how he was.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow.
And I looked and thought, was it Siri? Was it a last number I called? Was it this? Was it? And I could not find any record of Siri. Siri was completely off, and there was no record of me calling that number. So that was something that will always stay with me, because it was very personal to me. And I think that's often the case. We go out researching, and then suddenly we see something. Another time was I can remember as a child, I was a teenager, like anyone, having a row with the parents. And my great uncle, who I was very, very close to, he had this old grandfather clock. And I was determined to go out and have a good time that night, and my parents were telling me off. And I can remember arguing, suddenly the clock's chiming upstairs, and it hadn't chimed. It had been broken as far as we know. And my mum turned around and said, that's your great uncle talking to you. Oh, wow. And I can remember that as clear as day. So, often those are the things that make us think, wow, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a comforting feeling. I really do.
Yeah,
I wish more people did. I think that they're so busy looking for the scare that they're missing so many things that are right in front of them.
I always enjoyed it when my grandfather would come around before my grandmother passed away, and he'd come and visit. And so I always, enjoyed that. And my uncle, who passed away a few years ago, he keeps coming around. So it's those, it's those little things that, it's supernatural, it's paranormal, what have you, but it's not scary.
Exactly.
No, and I think you've got the finger on the button there, where you say that so many people do it for the fear. They do it to be scared.
Trying to get a jump scare. Yeah.
And, it's all the wrong reasons, because naturally we've all got that in us, that we want a little bit of fright now and then. But, when you're doing it for just that reason, you're completely off the target,
You want fright? Look at my cable bill. Yeah. There you go. Okay. There are plenty of things out there that can give us that same feeling. But when we're talking about something so personal as to somebody's death, then I think it needs to be looked at in a much, much different fashion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Richard, since we're talking about this, your approach to investigating and asking spirits questions, to me, it's disrespectful when we start talking about that person's death. And I've been on investigations where the investigator's been like, well, you're dead, right? And to me, that's very disrespectful. So what's your approach when you start talking to these different spirits?
100%. They sometimes, I know that name's been used to death, the ghost whisperer, but they often call me the ghost whisperer because my granddad was a bit of a horse whisperer. He used to calm the horses down. And when I speak to, alleged spirit and that, I always speak with respect, and I always speak to them about, trying to get to what may be what they did in life, what emotions they have. I mean, I know that this is done to death on television, but sometimes I will play a piece of music if I think it's a relevant period of time.
Sure.
And I feel that's a little gift to them almost, because when you do play the music, you almost get that feeling that everything's coming alive, because music means so much to people. But I'm 100% with you when you're turning around and saying, do you know you're dead, and you're provoking people and doing all those kind of things. These are people that once lived, and you've got to go there with respect. You've got to show respect. And, there may be times you have to be firm if you've got an investigator with you and somebody feels that something's coming towards them that they're really frightened of or uneasy with. And you've got to be a bit firm with whatever it is then. But, it can all be done in the right way, definitely.
I have actually dealt with that on a very personal level. Gwen Clapper, Chris Loper, and myself were at probably the worst location I've ever been at.
Yeah.
And I'm normally the one that gets jumped. This particular time, Gwen got jumped. If me and Chris hadn't have kept our heads about us, and all of this was caught on tape, all of it. If we hadn't have kept our heads about us, it could have become a very dire situation.
Yeah.
And so the biggest advice I could give to anybody that's out there investigating with anyone, make sure that your people at least have a little bit of sanity in them, a little bit of self-control, and make sure that they can handle situations like this. Because if they can't, it's going to go south, and it's going to go south in a hurry.
And certainly make sure they're not intoxicated. And
absolutely,
100%, because I've seen so many things go wrong with that, and and also it's state of mind, if you're going to go on an event or you're going to go out on an event, just be aware of the people and their states of mind, and make sure they're in the right state of mind when they go out, because it can be we all know, well, we know as investigators and researchers, that when we've gone out, a member of the team can suddenly just out of nowhere start crying and get very emotional, and picking up the emotions of somebody. And, you've got to be careful the people you've got with you, and make sure, that they can deal with that.
They need to be solid.
Yeah.
And people need to have the balls to stand up and say, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
So I do want to get some of the questions from the chat. I've been collecting them. There's they're starting to pile up a little bit. So I'm going to knock out two at one time here. This from Lambie Pie 25. When we were talking before about you and your world travels, she wanted to know what country or area seems the most haunted to you, and Tim Schoen was asking your favorite place that you've investigated. Those kind of go together. So
yeah, sure. I would probably say my favorite place was Australia. I went to the Sydney quarantine station, which is in Sydney, and that is a fantastic place. It's in a place called Manly, which is part in Sydney, and it was an Aboriginal burial ground. And it's an old. What happened when people came over to Australia to when they emigrated over to Australia, they were held in the quarantine station, and there's been rumors of all sorts of ghosts there. And walking around the area, it's just so atmospheric, and it's kept exactly as it was, that old hospital kind of thing. You can see the old nurses' uniforms.
Wow.
And it was fantastic. I mean, one funny thing I'll say there is they did put me in one area, and there was a spider directly above me. And I turned around and said, forget the ghosts a minute. I said, this is Australia. That spider isn't isn't poisonous by any chance.
Right.
But that was just a funny sight, and luckily the spider wasn't. So, but no, Australia and probably Vietnam, and it's very difficult. I mean, again, Vietnam is an amazing place.
Right.
You go around Vietnam, see the local villages, and America Samoa. I'm giving you a couple here. Sorry, America Samoa. America Samoa. I went to a village, and there was they call a ghost an A2. That's AITU, I believe it is. AYTU. A2, it's pronounced, and that's what a Polynesian ghost is known as. And basically, I went to the village, and one girl, they first of all they were saying, no, we don't talk about that because we're all Christians now. We don't talk about ghosts and everything else. And this village chief, his daughter called me over and said, can I have a quick word? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And, I'm very respectful of, people don't want to talk about it. So, no, I do want to talk about it. She said, I have actually seen the A2, and I've seen the ghost appear in my village, and it appeared in my village and walked through the village, and
oh, wow.
That was fascinating just to get the first-hand experience.
No, absolutely. This is from Zippy Davis. He says, I believe in letting people rest in peace, but what if they passed away in war without giving their final word? What's your thoughts on that?
I think yes, I 100% agree that if ever we go to locations, and I struggle with it sometimes because we don't want to be upsetting anyone and disturbing places that don't need to be investigated, because we don't want to be because people should be left in peace. When there is a location and something's going on, it's worth researching, and then it's looking at it in the way of if you've got somebody that, I mean, I'm not a medium, I'm not a psychic, but if I've got somebody that works with me that is, if she feels that person needs help, she's there to be able to give that advice and help them move forward.
Good. From Tom McNicholas, are there any hauntings or locations from the Roman Inquisition?
I haven't come across them. I've heard a few Roman ghosts up in York. Probably Vanessa, you've probably heard about that. But
I've seen them.
You've seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently people have seen like the feet of Roman soldiers up in York. I mean, that's because obviously if they're on a different level or ground level, they're still on that level that may have moved. But what did you see, Vanessa?
I actually saw them from just around their pelvic area up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen some people talk about the heads.
Yeah.
They just see the heads.
Yeah. Because and Richard made a very good point, because the geography of the land, the depth of the land that they were walking on was much lower at that time.
Yeah.
So with everything being built upon and
exactly.
dirt brought in. So I saw them from right about their pelvic area up, and I saw them marching.
Yeah, but that'd probably be more of a residual haunt. Some
yes.
captured energy. Yeah.
Rather than intelligent. Yeah.
So since you've been to Alcatraz, B3 Airspace was wondering about the tunnels under Alcatraz and what your feelings are about them.
I never got to the tunnels.
Oh, okay. Well,
so really difficult for me to give my take on the tunnels. I did go to D Block and spent time in D Block, and I felt the atmosphere there, like of being enclosed and everything else that you get in those kind of areas. I didn't really pick up much, but I do want to go back, definitely. But no, I never got to the tunnels, so that's something I would love to do. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about, I've not researched the tunnels of Alcatraz, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Robert Hanna was wondering if you've ever been to or interested in visiting Poveglia Island in Italy.
Is that the island in Italy? I know there's an island in Italy where they took the plague.
Yeah, it was the old quarantine island. Yeah.
Yeah, is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Getting, I think. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. Yeah. It's funny you should say that. That's one I've been looking at quite recently. Actually, I'd forgot the name then, and I've been thinking, would it be fantastic just to go there, on the island over there, and just just see what you get there. I mean, I don't know, Vanessa, that would be interesting if you could feel something in a place like that, because I mean, the emotions must be great,
They are. I was in Mary King's Close, and in Scotland, similar situation. They were everything was just built on top of them, and it's weird because they died from the plague. Yeah. They know they died from the plague, but they do their darndest to act with as much normality as possible.
Sure.
They really do. It's almost as if they're trying to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Which is very touching when you think of it. So it's when I've dealt with areas that have dealt with plague or famine, I do have to deal with it, but not the same as if I'm on a battlefield.
Do you find afterwards the energy, picking up on this emotion and feeling? Do you feel like you're drained for days? Weeks
100%. When I was in Ireland, I actually got so affected that my left eye was trying to pointing at my nose. I couldn't control it.
I mean, I've had
dangerous.
I've had it for weeks after, the effect and feeling drained and tired, and also the some places the emotion has got so intense. Because I said to one lady that went out as a researcher, I said, please think carefully about if you want to do this, because she got so depressed with it. And I said, I'm thinking of your own mental well-being. She did in the end. She doesn't do it anymore. She found that she used to get drained so much with it and so emotional that I think it was wise that she kind of stepped back from it.
It takes a lot of self-reflection and knowing when to say no and knowing how to take care of yourself to be able to get through it. And it took me a long time to get to the point to where I feel okay doing this.
Sure.
It really did.
Yeah.
If you get a sponsor for that Italy trip, double tickets, dude, I'm going with you.
I think all three of us could,
I'd love to go. Absolutely.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah.
On that note, Richard, Shana was wondering what you do or what you use for a para-hangover after investigating.
For a hangover after investigating, probably I just have watch a good movie, try to completely unwind from it. A McDonald's on the way home. Even though I'm trying to be healthy, it's I'm afraid the Big Mac always calls to you after investigation.
Right.
Chocolate works really well too.
Yeah, we use dark chocolate.
Yeah,
that does work really well.
Nachos. Don't knock it. Nachos.
Well, I'm just thinking. I mean, I like nachos. I like dark chocolate. Just together, it seems a little. I get you on that one.
It's a
bit of a mixture.
Food.
I get it. Sharon Lane was wondering, does paranormal activity accelerate when there's a lot of stress in a home?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people are still trying to find the answers to that. I think somebody like Vanessa would probably picking up things. I mean, I would say as a researcher that there is sometimes a lot of evidence that happens. It's almost like the stone tape theory or recording in, residual energy, picking up the building, picks up that emotion. I mean, I've been to some places that I've not been aware of, because when I go out and I do the ghost challenge, I don't want to know the history. Even though I'm not a medium, I don't want to go there with what's been shown on television or anything else. And I went to one location and I felt really, really uneasy and felt a real lot of stress in that area. Not been a medium, not been a psychic. It was very interesting. And then I was told that somebody was murdered in that area. So yeah, I think they probably can. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I will not disclose the location because it's coming in a future episode. But
sure,
Gwen and I were at a particular location that had seen so much death and so much heartache, and to try to cover up this, they tried to make this place into a happy place.
Yeah.
And everybody avoided it.
Yeah.
Nobody would step on it. Nobody would go anywhere near it. You could still feel it vibrating out of the ground. So absolutely it can leave its mark.
Well, the funny thing is, when I was a child, my mother went through various illness, and I was looked after by another family. And I remember they were a fantastic family. They really looked after me. No problems with the family, so there's no worries there. But there was a particular room in their house I would not go near. And the house isn't that far from me, and I'm trying to kind of do a bit of research on it and find out if something occurred in that home long before, because I felt that as a child. That was long before you even got influenced as a researcher, and I just felt that kind of shiver and real. I don't want to go in that room.
This sounds really weird, but was there a running body of water near that house?
Not near there, no. Not far away though. Not far away.
No, within a mile, maybe two.
Yeah.
It has to do with that, and I know that sounds really bizarre.
Sure.
And less to do with the house itself, and more to do with the ground that it's on, and it has to do with somebody who drowned somebody in that water.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
So just let me know. You're on my page.
I will definitely let you know on that one. Yeah.
A question here from Shana. Richard, she was wondering if you've encountered any Fae activity.
No, I haven't. But I know it's very much an activity that is. But I've not particularly myself. No.
It's something that I wonder about because we've experienced something that may have been a fairy. We don't really know for certain. Yeah. And so when that happened, started doing a little research. It was very difficult for us to research that because of all the legend and folklore.
Sure.
And you have studied folklore. So my question to you is, how do you as a researcher get through all of those stories and get to those original nuggets of truth? Because just for instance, with the Fae and the fairies, you have people write books about their social hierarchy and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, I mean, who sat down with the fairy to ask them how their social structure was? So what do you do as a researcher to try to get to those original grains of truth?
It's very difficult, because that folklore is very much what's been passed down for the ages, and trying to get to the traditional one is sometimes you find that when a lot of these folklore started, we were so long ago you need to actually get to the original witnesses to get the real story. But I go back a lot in time when I research it. I go to a lot of the original people. I forget the name. There's a reverend that was Sabin Baron. The name escapes me. He was researching folklore a very, very long time ago. And I read a lot of his books and I research a lot of his work. With fairies, I mean, the thing about that is people often think, it's an interesting subject because, people immediately think of the fairies on television and Hollywood and,
right.
and it's nothing like that. I mean, that some people thought they were almost like demons, and there was demonology behind it. And, there was a lot of belief in, there's a lot of belief up in Norway still of hidden folk and, up that way, and very much going into this sort of animism and the elementals and, those kind of things. It's a very interesting subject, which I'm still researching on. I mean, I've gone to witchcraft, but that's one that I do find fascinating because, it does come up a lot.
Well, and the term, the elementals actually didn't come into the 17th or 18th century?
Yeah, round about then it was there.
Yeah, and it was actually, I don't know what the term was for an alchemist at the time, that was actually trying to put medicines or particular herbs together. Yeah. And what he was trying to do was actually apply an element to this particular potion, for lack of a better way of putting it. And people seem to have run with the idea of the elementals, thinking that they have been here all this time, when in fact they were made up by an alchemist.
Yeah, yeah.
In the 17th, 18th century. So I'm interested in that. Mm-hmm.
It's often the case. It's often, something more modern that has kind of made the story more doable now, and that can be the problem with it. Yeah.
Well, do you think there's a lot of modern created mythology that's starting to work itself into some of these stories, or even, creating new entities, like Elemental being a newer type one? Do you see that happening a lot still?
I mean, you've still got the urban legends, haven't you? That still go on. I mean, you've got and I've heard the story about somebody said to me, "Did you hear about this man that executed this woman that executed somebody in the back of a car?" And then you realised it wasn't a woman; it was a man dressed up with a wig. And you're saying, "Well, I've heard that murder story, passed down." And thing. I think it's still probably going on. Yeah, I mean, what was quite funny about stories is we were in a haunted church a long time back, and we were praying the hymn Jerusalem. And I turned around and said to somebody, "All you need now is, it's pitch black here, somebody to turn up and hear the sound Jerusalem coming out of this deserted church, or they think it's deserted, don't know we're in there, and then you've got the story for that church is haunted." So,
That's very true.
Right.
That's very true.
A question here from Nick Moulet. He says that, "I've heard that parts of the UK are said to have what are called fairy paths, and it's said that if you block a path, bad luck is supposed to occur. Have you encountered that?"
I've heard the saying, but I've not actually encountered it myself, but I've heard about it. But again, this is something I need to research more on with folklore, the fairy side of stories and that. I've definitely heard that saying. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So the rumor is out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing that seems to be the common denominator in the majority of the tales that you hear about the Fae, is that they're tricksters.
Yeah.
Tinkerbell, they are not, when it comes to this cute little thing with wings and it sprinkles fairy dust and everybody's all happy. That nothing could be further from the truth.
No.
No,
definitely. Yeah.
So if I was going to study something like that, and Richard, you and I talked about this, about you getting over to Ireland, I would probably hit the oldest pub known in the world, I believe, and that's Sean's.
Yeah.
Sean's, and they're bound to have some historical stuff that would be very, very, very interesting to read. I believe they've been in business for over 900 years.
That's interesting. I think that's somewhere I'm going to go and visit, because that's, I said I haven't. I don't know if the listeners heard that, but living in England all my life, going around the world, and Ireland's the one place I haven't been to. So
I know
it's like right next door.
Yeah,
it's like a 50-pound ticket. You can fly
far cheaper than around the world.
Right. Yeah, you can go from Manchester to Belfast for 50 pounds. Okay.
Oh, definitely.
I'm just saying.
Well, we're winding down to the end of the show. So, Richard, how can people discover more about you, your investigations, and everything that you're up to and doing?
Yeah, sure. They can look me up, www.theghostchallenger.co.uk. They can also find me at Real Richard Case on Twitter. I think that's what my Twitter handle is. Always difficult to find a good Twitter handle. And they can also find me on Facebook on my page. And I'm looking at going back and doing challenges. At the moment, I've been doing a lot of lectures and talks and a lot of radio. So there's going to be a new YouTube channel hopefully coming out, and I'm even thinking of podcasting myself. So
good.
A lot of excitement.
We do have some viewers over in the UK. So is there a particular lecture coming up they can find you at?
Yeah, there's one going to be at the. It's going to be. I forgot the name of the place now. That's great, isn't it? Starting to get to that age, of my life and time of the morning. And
it's a little early over there. Everybody, you need to realize it's about 3:30 in the morning over there.
Yeah.
Clevedon Pier, that's it. Clevedon Pier. I had to think about that. Clevedon Pier, the wonderful Victorian pier that I did a challenge on, where they had a ghost, and I'm going to do a lecture at Clevedon Pier in near Bristol. So that's going to be one place they can come and visit and listen.
Oh, fantastic!
Very cool.
All right, Richard, we really appreciate having you on the show. We'll definitely have to have you back. The hour went quick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It did. Thank you. Enjoyed it. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And get some rest.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.